fellow chatterers and anyone else who has popped by because you're curious or lost. And by lost, I mean a Schwab fan who loves all her work and does not like to hear any criticism of her books. Or if you are in fact V.E. Schwab, hello, congratulations on being a successful published author with many fans that enjoy your books. But I really have to pause this one. I have a lot of feelings. I have a lot of thoughts that I need to get off my chest because I found I'm only talking about this much. Look, I have read this little section here. This is a little section I'm talking about. Haven't read any further, but I need to pause it because the bit I have read, I found I was rant reading. And I don't want to do that. So I've decided to pause it in the hope that I can be in a better mood for it and pick it up later. But it's not living up to my expectation. So I just wanted to discuss why I am pausing A Conjuring of Light, which is the third book in V.E. Schwab's A Dark Shades of Magic trilogy, which is an adult urban fantasy, which is quite beloved by a few people. And I came to it because I wanted to read Schwab. I wanted to read her works that I was hearing everyone talk about. So I found BookTube during the pandemic 2020. I heard so many people talking about how much they loved Vicious and this series, Shades of Magic. Then obviously there was Addie LaRue that had just come out and everyone was loving that. I saw the book. I loved the premise. I thought the cover was beautiful. I bought it. It's under my bed. I still need to earn it. I didn't want to read it straight away because so many people were saying that it's not her usual style. She had a very different writing style for that one. So I wanted to read something that was more her usual style before I read something that was her different style, which is why I thought I would start off with the Shades of Magic. And then doing my chatty challenge this year, which is the 7-year TBR itch that I want to scratch, books I want to read, I looked at all the Goodreads Choice Awards for the last 7 years and picked some of the top adult fantasy books that were on there and gave myself a list of all of those that I want to read this year and see if I agree with their rankings, which one I thought was the best year, etc. And all of the books in the Shades of Magic trilogy were on there, so I thought that was perfect. So I bought myself the special edition copies because that's how much I thought I was going to love this series. So I've possibly hyped this up. I've possibly overhyped it to myself. Possibly. However, I'm going to lay it all out for you as to why I'm feeling frustrated and why I want to pause it. If you are a Schwab fan and you find rant videos funny, if you enjoy a difference of opinion, stick around, have a chat, tell me why you love this or the other two, part 1 of this. I'd love to hear it. So books 1 and 2, I was on board with, first of all, love the premise. 4 different Londons, sounds fantastic, very excited. I was on board for the travelling between worlds, it only being the Arturi, the magicians. They're having one from Red London, which was Kel, one from White London, which was Holland, who was a bit creepy. I enjoyed all of that. I enjoyed meeting a character in Grey London. I enjoyed this threat of Black London that's like a dead world because of the magic, the kind of ideas around magic, the elemental bits. Generally liked the characters. There were moments where I felt I wanted more from them. I wanted to hear more about them, and there were moments where I felt they weren't quite accepting the consequences of certain things, but generally enjoyed. Struggled a bit with the plot towards the end because I felt it was wrapped up too neatly. I thought it could have been interesting if it then trickled into the next 2 books. There were lots of things that they weren't aware of that just magically disappeared at the end of that book. So I thought, well, maybe, this is just the introduction to it all, and like the stuff that really is going to happen in the next 2 books. So we're going to get into it all. Second book, there was more character development. All the stuff I wanted between Kel and Rye, their relationship, the brotheriness, a bit more of how Kel's grown up, the awkwardness with being adopted by the King and Queen of Red London, whilst Rye is their biological child and Kel's the adopted one, / slightly like a prisoner. That was also explored, which was wonderful. Other characters grew. Lila started to deal with consequences of past things, actions that happened in the previous book. There were consequences too, in terms of how other characters treated them, how Kel was then viewed by the rest of Red London. That was all really good. I enjoyed hanging out in there and seeing what was happening. However, we didn't leave Red London. Grey London barely got a look in. We were barely there. Black London, that I was so excited to see, very minimal. And White London, which in the first book had been this sort of like fearsome, decaying, fascinating place, wasn't even like a secondary storyline. It was like a footnote. There was just, was promised a lot and then nothing. But at the end, it was different. The end of Gathering to Shadows, I was like, oh, okay, yeah. Sadly, did not live up to expectation. The setup in here did not give me the expected payoff in here. So, if you've made it this far in the video and are intending to pick up these books, you need to stop watching now, because I'm about to go full in on the spoilers for the first 2 books and this part. I'm going full in. So you've been warned, get out. Get out now. But if you're staying, stick around and prepare for some in-depth ranting. So let's set the scene, shall we, of the cliffhanger that we had at the end of Gathering of Shadows. We have the Red King and Queen have we finally got that confrontation I was looking forward to. That was great. That was wonderful. Kel got arrested. That was exciting. He had a fantastic conversation with the king in the cell about their different views on things, and Kel called him out for all of his mistreatment. It was brilliant. I loved that. That was great. Slight issue with how it was left, like Kel just going, you know, I can just break out of here because magic, and the king's just, there could have been a shouting for the guards or something to imply that he was serious about keeping Kel imprisoned, not just, oh yeah, good point, I'll hold the door open for you. Just the tension level just kind of went with that bit, but I can get over that. That's okay. So Kel is understandably pissed off. Rye is understandably pissed off. They decided to imprison his brother. Then, of course, Kel makes a stupid decision, gets taken to White London, trapped in a collar, magic drained. Intrigue. And then we have the reaction of that in Red London because of Rye and Kel sharing the twin hearts. What happens to Kel happens to Rye. If Kel dies, Rye dies. And Rye is then struck down in pain. No one knows where Kel is. Intense. Fabulous. And then we have Lila going, Kel's gone to a different London. I'm the only one that can get there. I think, let's see if it works. Also intense. Great. Wonderful. And then we have the big bad. Blah, 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 blah. Oh yeah. And then we have Black London King Osron. I'm going to call him Osron from now, or Black London King, who had been inhabiting Holland's body in White London, goes full on taking Holland's body. So there was a really nice moment where you had Holland and Kel talking to each other. Didn't last long because he had that. And then Black Magic London's like, do you know what? I'm off to go destroy Red London. So there's very high tensions going on. This is how we left it with all of those scenarios. I'm just trying to find the right place, which I can't find and I can't edit, so just bear with me on this. Lila backed away as the prince curled in on himself. She started searching for the trees, for a sign of Kell, of the woman, of the way they had gone. Rye rolled onto his side, tried to rise, failed, and began coughing blood onto the orchard floor. "Someone find Kell," demanded the Queen, her voice on the edge of hysteria. Where had he gone? "What can I do, Rye?" whispered Alucard. "What can I do?" Tension. We're leaving Rye in pain. Everyone's freaking out. Exciting. We then come on to where Kell actually is, in White London. Kell fought against the metal frame as his vision blurred, refocused, and then began to tunnel. "Where are you going?" The demon held something up for him to see, and Kell's heart lurched. It was a single crimson coin, marked by a gold star in its centre. A red London lin. "No," he pleaded, twisting against the cuffs until they shredded his skin and blood streamed down his wrists. "Osron, you can't!" The demon only smiled. "But who will stop me now?" Again, intense. We're all, the levels, the tension, it's all there. But I'm not done yet. We've got one more. Here comes Lila. This is madness, she thought, sheer and utter madness. She knew the difference between elemental and Antari. That's the full-on magicians that can travel between worlds. Yes, she had survived before, but she had been with Kell under the protection of his magic, and now she was alone. What am I? She'd wondered every night. Now Lila swallowed and drew the knife's blade across her forearm. It bit into her flesh, and a thin ribbon of red rose and spilled over. She smeared the wall with her blood and clutched the shard of stone. Whatever I am, she thought, pressing her hand to the wall, let it be enough. And that's where it finishes. So we're going into this with high levels of excitement. What's going to happen? Oh my goodness. So with all of that in mind, here is the first line of Conjuring of Light. Delilah Bard, always a thief, recently a magician, and one day, hopefully a pirate, was running as fast as she could. All of that tension, all of that exciting, oh my goodness, the shitteth has hitteth the fan, we open with a joke. A joke. Bit of a mood killer, not really the range we were going for here. So it's not a good start when immediately the first line of the book is jarring and kind of annoys you. I mean, this is an adult fantasy. It's not a middle grade. It's not even a YA. We know that Lila Bard is a thief. We know she's a magician, and we know she wants to be a pirate. We already know her character. You don't need to explain it in the beginning of the book. It just felt so out of place. And immediately I'm like, what are you doing? The rest of the paragraph is fine. Hold on, Kell, she thought, as she sprinted through the steep streets of Red London, still clutching the shard of stone that had once been part of Astrid Dane's mouth, a token stolen in another life, when magic and the idea of multiple worlds were new to her, when she had only just discovered that people could be possessed or bound like rope or turned to stone. That is great. Start with that. So anyway, I got the line out of my head, I rewrote it, I reshuffled some words around, and I just started with the first paragraph and ignored that and carried on. I'm just checking my notes to make sure I say everything I want to, and they're all in the wrong order, which is not helpful. Okay, so bang, hitting the ground running, starting where we left off. Go, go, go. Lila's off to do the dangerous travel thing. Kell's imprisoned, stripped of magic. Rye is somewhere at death's door. Everyone's panicking about him. And Holland's locked into the evil magic king brain thing. So we are already very high on the tension level. Unfortunately, with everything being this high up, it can only go downhill. It can go down and then back up, but it can only go down to start off with. Because if we're just going to stay here, it's just going to feel really flat because we're at the same level of angst. We need this to make me feel excited and pulled in again. So, as I carried on reading, it felt like it was going in the right direction. So we're going to start with Lila. She's about to attempt to travel through worlds like the Anturi can. She doesn't know she's Anturi. We all presume she's Anturi. She doesn't know. It could be very dangerous. She knows she can do a bit of magic, so she's doing a wing and a prayer. Chest heaving and pulse high, Lila swallowed and said the words as boldly as she could, words that belonged only on the lips of a blood magician, an Antari, like Holland, like Kel, as Travas. The magic sang up her arm and through her chest, and then the city lurched around her, gravity twisting as the world gave way. Lila thought it would be easy, or at least simple, something you either survived or did not. She was wrong. Brilliant, lovely, great. It's going to be not so straightforward, is it? Something's going to happen. Let's carry on with Lila's story. What happens when she goes through? Is she okay? Where is she going to end up somewhere completely random? Is she going to be pulled in half? Is she going to be stuck in limbo? For a single horrifying moment, Lila ceased to exist. She felt herself unravel, breaking apart into millions of threads, each one stretching, fraying, threatening to snap as she stepped out of the world, out of life and into nothing. And then just as suddenly, she was staggering forward onto her hands and knees in the street. The ground beneath her palms, and there was ground, so that was at least a good sign. Lila recognised the road beneath her boots, the castle rising against the setting sun. It was the same city. She was completely wrong. Completely wrong? Maybe slightly wrong. She just had a little bit of pain, didn't she? Pulled apart and then stuck back together again. Didn't massively change anything. It was more, Lila Bard tries to make it through the gate. Tick, objective achieved. Is in White London. Tick, objective achieved. Near where Kel is. Tick, objective achieved. I was kind of hoping for a bit more of an exploration of White London, perhaps. See a little bit more. It's a really interesting world. We've not spent time there. Did not get that. I was thinking maybe Lila could end up somewhere completely random, like she could have ended up at a completely different place in White London and be completely disorientated because she was just guessing about where she was going to end up, or she'd miscalculated, or she ended up where she expected to, but actually Holland had moved castles and was actually keeping Kel somewhere else. That could have been fun. She could have fallen in with some other people. She could have fallen in with some sort of like desperate revolutionaries, or maybe like people who knew Ionka. I'm going to call it Ionka. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, but Holland's minion that he turned into a Antari. So I was hoping that, we'd find out a bit more. But no. We have, there we go. We have 2 pages of Lila arriving in White London and locating Kel. Just maybe 4 if they're back to back. 4 pages of her arriving, getting to Kel. Disappointing. Oh, and there we go. She's met Yonka. And she wants to go in. She's not allowed in. She knows Kel's on the other side of the door. But she's met Yonka. I thought that could be exciting, couldn't it? These are 2 intriguing characters. They are both women who've had a tough time in their respective places. They don't want to sit around and just wait for something to happen. They want to go and grasp life. They're fighters. They now have this amazing new magical ability. They're really enjoying magic. They're good at magic. They've kind of got enough in common, a lot in common, even though they're like on different sides of this, for want of a better word, argument. I thought it might have been fun for them to have a conversation, for them to kind of realise that there is a sort of, what's that word? Mutual respect, but when you don't actually want to. A begrudging respect. I think they could have had a begrudging respect for each other. They could have fought. Fight scene, fun, action-packed. Could have carried on with that and had them run out of weapons and, magic blastinginess. there could have been something that could have caused them to then stop fighting. If Yonka had realised that Holland had just been taken over by the King of Black London, then they could have made a temporary alliance, had Yonka on her side for a little bit. That could have been fun. It had so many opportunities for them to realise they've got very similar goals, and but you know, having their own different what they want, like Yonka wanting justice for her London, Lila wanting Kel not to be destroyed. I think it could have been fun, and it could have had a storyline where they start to, you know, have some sort of friendship, but then Lila gets stabbed in the back because Yonka's like, well, I'm still always just going to follow what Holland tells me to because he saved me. So sorry, not sorry. That could have been fun. But no, Lila kills her. Dead. Bye, Yonka. We barely knew you. Which brings me to another point. What was the point of Yonka? She had a really interesting potential. The small snippets we saw of Yonka in the first book, she could have been such an interesting character, finding out where she came from, what she's had to do to be where she is, what is it she wants for White London, other people who knew her before she was turned into an Atari. But she didn't feel so much like a character, more like a plot device. She might as well have just been this, you know, non-speaking heavy that just carries out Holland's work, because she's just, that's it. She's served her purpose. She's out of here. She's gone. Now, you can argue that Rye's dying, Kel's maiming himself, Lila needs to get through the door. We don't have time for her to sit and have a chat with Yonka, or like to go off on any kind of White London exploring adventures. But why? That would have helped if Rye could be stabilised. He's in pain and suffering because of Kel having that collar draining his magic around his neck. But Kel's not dying, so Rye shouldn't be dying. He's just in pain. So we could have him pulling himself in, trying to deal and block out the pain and keep going. So it's not such a need. And that can give us a little bit more of a lull, so we can then get back up again. So it doesn't need to be so much of a rush. We didn't have to rush through this because we need to make sure Rye and Kel are okay. That was, one thing that was another missed opportunity. So just by having Rye being stabilised, lying in a bed, talking to people, in pain, everyone then wondering where Kel is, what's happening to Kel, it would just change the dynamic a little bit. It could have just had an opportunity for Alucard and Rye to have a chat with each other. It could give us a bit more tension about Rye worrying about where Kel is and what's going on, and Rye describing what he can feel and then worrying about what's happening to Kel because of it. And it could just give a chance for all of the characters to breathe. We could then have some nice character moments between Lila and where she finds herself, and what it must mean that she managed to travel through into a different world and what's happening in this different world. But no, Rye's dying. Kel is maiming himself to try and get free. There is such a big air of desperation and panic that's going on here, which again is such a missed opportunity, because why couldn't we explore White London? It's really intriguing. I found Holland's story in the first book really intriguing, what he was having to suffer through, what he wanted, how twisted was he, or how much was he being forced to be that way. What is the deal with White London? What was White London like before Black London basically sucked out all the magic and caused issues? What was White London like before Black London's basically left it kind of being polluted and rotting? Their way of choosing a monarch seems really interesting. just in that it's basically like murdering people to get to the throne, which I know actually happened quite a lot of the time, but this was a much more kind of above board, explicit, like, we're very open with, we will kill you and claim the throne. So that would have been interesting to kind of seen the Danes' backstory, to kind of hear if there was any kind of like underground revolution to their overtaking, what other people will be kind of coming out of the woodwork to want to claim the throne. Just Kel and Lila being trapped there for a while, we could have explored all of that. It's such a shame that we didn't. Yeah, so Kel had this ridiculous plan that he desperately needs to get out, so he's just going to maim his hands and like totally break up all the bones. So he's just got these destroyed bits of fleshy meat on the end of his wrists that he can then pull through the cuffs and be fine. Obviously causes Rye an excruciating amount of pain, so he's freaking out, and unsurprisingly, Kel passes out from all the pain. What was the point? Very silly plan. Didn't really add anything other than incapacitating Kel and causing Rye to scream. I don't quite understand what he was hoping to accomplish with that. It didn't quite make sense. So anyway, mega desperation going on. So obviously we have Lyra finding Kel. Tick. Lyra heals Kel. Tick. Rye is then healed. Tick. Obviously a lot happens with Rye before he gets healed, which I'm going to get into. So, Rye, if I can find him. Where are you, Rye? Oh, you're here. So far in this book, we've not stopped running. Like I said, it's been like full in, hitting the ground, going along this line, and we haven't stopped. We haven't had any moments for these characters to breathe. So like I was saying, we've just been rushing through. I've not had the moment to stop and think about the emotional impact of Rye dying, or of characters losing him, or of what that might mean for everyone else involved. I just haven't. I'm still running. I'm not stopping to think and worry. So I can't get that emotional impact of Rye dying and Rye being dead, because I just felt we haven't had that built up. If it happened at the end of this book, then yes, we've been spending a lot of time with them. It felt very invested. Now, it's been a month for me in between these two books. So we've just introduced them, but all we've had is Rye screaming in pain, Alucard going, "What's wrong?" And then the Queen comes in and has this whole monologue about losing her child. And it's like, well, I don't actually know you. I can sympathise on a generic mum point of view, but I don't actually know your character. We've not really had a moment to sit down and get to know you at all. And then suddenly I can't just give you my emotional feels because of that. So I wanted to feel emotionally connected to that scene, but I just didn't. And also, pretty certain that Rye's not going to stay dead. It didn't feel that he was going to stay dead at all. I felt he's got a much bigger part to play in all of this, and he wasn't going to die. It wouldn't make sense for the character to die. So I wasn't invested in any of that at all. What I think would have made much more sense is, like I said about Rye being stabilised, we've still got all of this, so linking it back to the first book, we've still got all of this political intrigue going on with the different countries in Red London. This is all happening in the middle of a winner's ball, which Alucard should be there celebrating. So to kind of jack up the tension again between Alucard and Rye, which hadn't quite been there. They'd kind of been reunited as ex-lovers. We hadn't kind of had that whole, why did you leave kind of situation. And we had also had Rye being really mad at his parents for imprisoning Kel. So we could have more along the lines of King Maxim trying to save face. We need to be going and showing our presence there. you know, for the sake of the country and all of that. And Rye could suck it up with, you know, him wanting to be the whole good king thing, sucking up all the pain and going out there, because that would have been tense, because he'd be in public and we'd be knowing that he was in excruciating pain and he could lose his guard at any moment and start freaking people out by being in pain. And also he's worrying about Kel, and he's annoyed that he's having to go and like show his face at this ball, and that could make him really snippy with both his parents and also with Alucard as well. So that could have had some fun kind of like tensions and character dynamics as they sniped at each other. You know, Rye hasn't actually confronted Alucard about the fact that he left and broke his heart. Like, that conversation hasn't happened. So that would have been fun to have explored that. We could have then had Rye fainting, him going off to the bedroom, his condition getting worse, us getting more concerned about him, Alucard explaining to him what happened, his side of the story. They could have had a really good heart-to-heart. We could have had the king and queen popping in and Rye accusing them of bungling the whole thing and being horrible to Kel, and Kel's his favourite person, and it could have had all of that coming out, and then Rye starting to go rapidly downhill. And then not only have we got that physical concern, but we've also got that emotional concern of him leaving his parents with those angry words, and him and Alucard just getting to the point of starting to understand each other, and then that whole thing is taken away. That would have given us that emotional connection and that not wanting him to die feeling. But we didn't get that. Rye died, tick. Queen cried, tick. Lila and Kel come back, tick. So basically, what has happened at the end of all of this? Just checking my notes, make sure I haven't left anything. Yep. So the whole thing was kind of wrapped up at the end of part one. Like, everything that had been set off wrapped up really neatly at this end. The only thing that wasn't is that we have the Black London Godzilla potentially on the rampage in Red London. Now, I don't feel myself being excited about this kind of mental battle that Holland is going to be having with the Black London King, Osram. I don't really feel like it's got a lot of place to go. Like, he's going to snipe up, he's going to get pushed down, he's going to snipe up, he's going to get pushed down. It doesn't, I'm not going to be excited about that. I was excited about Holland's character. I really enjoyed his kind of like manipulation of things and his kind of greater understanding of magic, that he seemed to be like digging at Kel, and that wound him up in the first book. I found all of that intriguing. I enjoyed the manipulations of the Danes that we had, of them possessing other people, so you not quite knowing who to trust. That was all interesting. If we could have had that, that would have been good. But villain, Black London King, I don't really know any more human aspect to him other than he wants power. There's nothing else I find intriguing, whereas Holland, we knew what he wanted. He wanted White London. We knew he suffered a lot and he's going to sacrifice Kel for that. It was more interesting having him in more of the villain role. Yeah, so all of that kind of unsureness, that sort of like secretiveness would have been more fun. Yeah, and then we kind of get like Kel and Holland have almost like swapped places. Like in Dark Shade of Magic, we had Holland being like, Kel, you don't understand magic. You don't understand like all the stuff that you've had to resist and had to break through to kind of get to this point that I am. You don't get it as much. And Kel struggling with the magical black stone in the previous one, and like how it can start chipping away at you and drawing you in. We got a bit of that in Gathering of Shadows that he was trying to overcome. But Holland having been that much more aware, then bringing back the Black London King, and Kel going, you're stupid. It just didn't quite fit with what we'd had previously. Wasn't quite where I wanted it. Now, I've read other adult fantasy trilogies where a lot of stuff has happened at the end of book 2 or at the beginning of book 3 in terms of like feeling a bit like climactic. But they all seem to move forward with it. There seemed to be a clear progression of the characters happening that propelled the story forward. So and the consequences being dealt with. So whether that was characters chatting, characters, because of the journey they've taken, changing and developing, it shaped, and that helped to then shape the eventual story. So either from their journey we had a progression with character development, learning more about the world or about the magic system or other characters, or some sort of emotional payoff, or a change of plot and direction from these big climactic events that made the story move forward. In this, I feel like we have not moved forward at all. I feel like we've started playing this game, gone up 10 levels, completed a task, and now we're back at the main menu. Like, it's not improved us at all. So point 1, progression with character development. I don't really think we've had any character develop in any major ways. I mean, we know Lila's an Atari, but that's more of a skill set than a character development. Learning more about the world and other characters. Could have explored White London, could have explored Yonka, but no, we leave, Yonka dies. Magic system. Lila found Kel because of a magical memory. That was convenient. Emotional payoff. Like I said, it would have been great to have had a Holland Kel chat, but Ozora took over the body very quickly. It would have been great to have a Rye and Alucard chat, but Rye was too busy dying. So they didn't feel any emotional payoff with that. Changing the plot. We haven't moved forward at all with the plot, apart from Black London King is now in Red London, which we kind of knew would be happening at some point. But there's nothing intriguing about that or suspenseful about that. If he just went off because he was going to do something mysterious, he could have showed up in Grey London. He could have maybe gone back to Black London and started trying to rebuild it and come back with all this extra power. Or he could be rampaging around White London trying to do more chaos. Or what we get instead is he told us he's going to Red London. That's not suspenseful. It's like, oh, there's Black London Godzilla. He's there. There he is. So, like I was saying, in some other adult fantasies, like in at the beginning of Assassin's Quest from Robin Hobb, we have a character who's gone through a lot. They're then dealing with the consequences and the repercussions of that, and how that's then going to shape their journey as they go through that next story. We've had an emotional payoff of two characters wanting to say a lot of things to each other and then having this moment of doing that. At the beginning of Winter of the Witch in the Winter Night trilogy by Catherine Arden, we have a very kind of climactic event at the beginning of the book, which takes us in a different direction, which expands the world, expands the plot, expands the story, and the character grows from that experience. With this, you're now back at level 1, apart from Godzilla on the Loose. So the last bit that was annoying me, Kel and Lila returned to Red London. Check. This is Kel's reception when he returns to Rye's bedside. But Rye was alive. He was alive. Kel sank to his knees, but before they hit the floor, she was there. Not Lila this time, but the Queen. She didn't stop him from falling, but sank gently with him, her fingers clutching at his fronts, tightening the folds of his coat. Kel braced himself for the words, the blow he'd left, he'd felled her son. Instead, Emiria Maresh, all she has a name, bent her head against his bare and blood-stained chest and cried. Then the King was there, in the doorway, breathless, as if he'd run the length of the palace. Kel braced himself for an attack, but the King said nothing, only folded Kel and Emiria both into a silent hug. Ah, hug. I don't know why I need a bookmark. I've read that bit now. So, all the tension with the King and Queen and the consequences of all that, hug it out, guys. It's solved by a big group hug. It's fine. Everything's fine. So yeah, so we've nicely wrapped that up. Didn't take us long. Everything's solved in part 1. So yeah, so Rye and Alucard and Kel and Lila all probably going to go off now on a nice big double date, where Kel is probably going to magically sneeze because of, you know, love and friendship, something magical that will then destroy the Black London magic, and Holland will be totally fine, and we'll join them for a big drink and then ease up. Problem solved. What was the point of all of that? What was the point? We haven't moved forward at all, apart from getting the Black London Godzilla on the rampage in Red London. We're back in Red London. We're back in Red London, and everyone's totally fine with each other. It's all fine. All fine, no change. So frustrating. So frustrating. So I thought, I can't rant read for the rest of this. I'm just going to be attacking the whole thing, which is not the right attitude for a book, especially when it's a book you want to enjoy. I want to like this. Like I've said, I was pulling out bits of this and I was like, this is great, this is fun. Just the setup did not pay off at all. No. I'm really annoyed. So I've now had my therapy. I've let it all out to you guys. I can now let it go, and I will read other books. I will swap my brain. I will come back to this, hopefully just accepting that this book is not doing an overarching plot that pulls all the different threads together. It is more of a sequential, like a series. It's like a TV series. It's like, here's a complication, action, resolution. Here's a complication, action, resolution. And we'll just do that until we get to the end. So if I can just try and embrace that ride, I might be able to read this with some enjoyment. Let's hope so. And now you can all come for me in the comments and say, but you didn't read the whole book. It's like, no, I didn't read the whole book. I've just explained why I couldn't read the whole book, because I was too cross to read the whole book. I feel I would hate read the book, and I don't want to hate read the book. I will read the book, but I need to calm down. And this is helping me calm down by sharing all my frustration with you guys on here.